Hi everyone, Sue from IC Sugar. Today I'm going to show you how I made Fawkes from Harry Potter. It is made from modelling chocolate and a variety of other tools and equipment. But before we get started, what I'd really like to share with you is that over the years I've learnt techniques that actually work for me. And what I'm going to show you today is the techniques that I use, but you might find when you make your own that it doesn't work for you and you might need to use something different or do something a little bit different, sculpt in a different way. So I really, if you've never tried sculpting before, and in fact I'm reasonably new to it myself, give it a go. The more you have a go at it, the more you try, the more you'll get used to different ways and ideas that work for you. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. If you've got any questions afterwards, feel free to let me know and I'll respond to you. Thank you.
Okay, so when we're modelling, what we're going to do here is actually take a picture of the item that you want to create, and you've got to probably remember that when you're putting an item on a cake, the item doesn't hold itself up. So you more or less need to create the bones of the item that you want to make. So what I've done with this particular one is have a look to see where it's going to be best supported. Now, I did consider modeling this or supporting it through the feet and actually having structures through the feet to hold it up, but the bird is actually quite angular and on a tilt, so it made more sense for me to run the bones, I suppose, through the middle of, or straight down from top to bottom, rather than angling it out through the feet. As you can see here, I'm actually using aluminium or tin foil, aluminium foil, whatever you want to call it, to form the shape of the bird. Clearly, this is not edible. I think the thing is, if you're going to have a customer who wants it solely to be edible, what you could possibly do with the inside is use, if you're in America, it's Rice Krispies. If you're in Australia, it's LCM bars. So you can just buy some LCM bars, squish them all together and use that to form the main body of the character that you're going to create. This is obviously not edible, and I'm not too fussed about it because no one's going to eat it anyway. But if that's not a problem, someone wants to keep it, then by all means use the body of the character as tin foil, because it's soft, it's easy to manipulate, and it's easy to crunch up, it's easy to form the shape that you want, and it's really, really lightweight. And I think that's what's really important. If you're going to model something solid, and let's say you use if it's something that's quite large and you use modelling paste or something like that, you're going to have to wait for it to dry before you can actually press and form it into something. So for me, if I'm not using stuff, I'll use tin foil. Now for the outside, I'm using modelling chocolate. You can make your own modelling chocolate. I have done that before, but I really suck at it, and I'm not so good. I always get it wrong every time, and it never comes out quite the texture that I want. And sometimes I'm a little bit lazy, and I literally can't be bothered. So I really just go, I buy my modelling chocolate. If you're going to use modelling chocolate for something that's larger, then clearly buying it is probably not cost effective, so making it might be better. But anyway, so as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm really just getting the shape of the bird. So if you're going to, whatever you're making, have a really, really good look at the shape that you are creating. And with the modelling chocolate, the beauty of this is if you've had enough for the day, you can put it aside and go back to it the next day. It's not going to dry on you. So here you can see a picture of the bird. And in fact, if you look at it, you can see that my nose is too long and the actual chest of the bird sits up higher than what I've got. So what I'm going to do now is go about remove some of the nose and start getting the shape of the beak. So really the first part of this video is more or less just around forming the shape that you're wanting. Spend some time, try and get it right, because the closer you get to something that looks accurate, the better the end result's going to be. Um, so so basically, once I've got the head shape, and you can see here you can see quite clearly that the upper part of the chest sticks out a fair bit more, and it goes in towards the feet a lot higher than what I've got. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to start to build up some of those areas. So the whole thing is not to be too fast. You can just, with modeling chocolate, because it's so, you can just add bits and pieces as you want. It's really, really, really cool. So you can just keep adding until you've really, really got the shape that makes you happy. With modeling chocolate, if it's warm, it's quite soft and it's easy to manipulate. If you're actually living somewhere colder, I've actually popped them in the microwave for a few seconds just to heat it up slightly. Now we're moving on to the head. So I guess the thing here that's really, really also important, make sure that when you're looking at the shape of something, that you've got the overall dimensions right. Take your time. Don't stress. Don't hurry. I think the thing with modeling something like this, I think what is probably hard to explain to a lot of people is that making one figurine can actually be almost as time consuming as actually making a whole cake. So it really is an art form to actually get in here and shape and model. But I guess, like I said, the thing here with this is you can just take your time. You could start this early, like you could start this a couple of weeks before the event, or however it is, however early you want. It's certainly not going to go off. You saw before that I'm really just going about getting the shape of the head. I added more modeling chocolate around the top of the head and the side of the eyes, just to create the indentation of where the eyes are going to sit. And I started making the feathers at the back. So again, it's a case of just getting the shape and starting to knife it. Just using a knife to get some lines and stuff like that and get your feather effect. And you can see here that I'm using really, really technical cake decorating tools. So yeah, joking. This is just a fork. So I was standing and thinking, how am I going to get bird feathers? I was looking around the kitchen. I was going to the pantry, trying to find a shape that would give me the right bird feathers. And in the end, I settled on a good old fork, which was fabulous. So as you can see, I really just scraped it in. And if you're going to do that, just make sure you don't scrape from top to bottom all in one go, because that doesn't really look like feathers. You want to sort of scratch them in a little bit. Oh, sorry, I had a moment, just forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, across the top of the head there, you can see I've used a fork as well, and just starting to get that shape around the just around the head. Now with the feathers, again, I'm using very untechnical tools, just using a knife. And I'm manipulating the modeling chocolate, just pulling it out. And what you'll see is I start to add more modeling chocolate, because I think if you look at a real picture of the bird, the feathers sort of tend to go out and around around a little bit. So they're certainly not what's the word for it? I suppose they're not even. So here we are, just finishing off a little bit of the feathering across the head. And just making sure, I guess the thing with modeling chocolate, which is also really cool, is it does easily mold into the other areas. So you can press it in or rub it in. And here I've just used a small tool just to join it. Now we're moving on to the face. Obviously, when you look at the real picture, Fawkes actually has a beak, like as in quite quite a curved beak. So I didn't have enough modeling chocolate there. So I've just started adding a little bit to the top just to create that curve. The bottom part of the beak actually joins in under. So have a close look at the picture that you've got. And we're really just trying to create the actual shape of the beak at the moment and roughly where the mouth goes. Now, The eyes, he has really small beady eyes, so we need to add in a little bit of modelling chocolate across the top just to create the top of his eyelids. And I'm just using a small ball tool just to move out some of the areas around the eyeballs, just creating a little bit of a hole in there, and his nostril. Yep. So the other thing I find really interesting, I very rarely get the right and the left side exactly the same. So I'll do one side and go, hey, that looks really cool. And then I'll go around the other side and go, oh, that doesn't look as good. That looks pretty pretty bad actually. So I never get them the same. So it's really annoying. But I suppose it's like anything. Even as humans, both sides of our faces are not normally the same. So hey. Okay, what am I doing now? All right. So we're putting in the his legs. And what I've done is just put in 2 pieces of wire just to give the legs a little bit more support. When I first had a look at this, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to create it, how I was going to get it to sit in the cake, and the best location for it, I decided that I wanted it on a perch. And as I said earlier, you could either have done it through the feet and wire the perch in, but because I've done it through the tail and the legs and the feet are added later, I didn't really need any structural work to be done through the legs and through the perch. So it's really just a wire just to keep it straight. You'll see later on that I've added the feet afterwards, and I'll show you that at the end. So with the tail here, I've done that. Really, it's no different to the around the head. I've merely just continued to add long strips of modelling chocolate until I've got it pretty much the shape that I'm wanting. And it really is no harder than that. Just continue to add. Make sure your strips are thin so they look like feathers. Now with modelling chocolate, it can break if you have stuff too thin. So if you do press the modelling chocolate or compact it together slightly so that each of the individual strands support the other, but you sort of still don't lose the look of it, that's the ideal way. So with his wings here, what I've done is I've created 6 balls of modelling chocolate, and I haven't used a tool cutter. I've really just measured the size of the wing that I need from top to bottom, roughly by looking at the dimension of the bird there. And I've just layered. Oh, sorry, that was a little bit annoying. The video pop up then. Hang on. Let me turn that off. Okay, so I've basically just layered the individual pieces of modelling chocolate on top of each other to create sort of a realistic looking wing. And you can see that what I then used also is, so I cut the feathers in using a knife, and then across the top of the wing, I actually used a tool that has like sort of like an oval shape on the end, just to create the feather effect across the top of the wing. You don't want to have to do it to the other couple of pieces of wing, because you're really just going to cover it over, and that's a waste of time. Now with the eyes, really I've only just used a couple of colours. If you look at him in the picture, his eyes are really just black and white, and there's not really an iris so much that you can see. So I've really just filled in the outline. I coloured in the eye black, and then I put a small round bit of modelling chocolate in a ball and just painted around it and left some of it white. So it wasn't really complicated. Now what we're doing here is just really lightly with a brush, I'm starting to colour the beak. when I first coloured the beak, I used a black, and if you have a look at his beak, it's not actually really black. You'll see that it's sort of a I don't know, a browny green, blacky colours. It's got sort of three tones through it. So I've ended up actually colouring it in black initially, and then I actually went over it with a couple of other different colours. So a little bit of forest green, just a tiny touch, and then a little bit of brown. Um, and obviously with the darker colors in through the areas that you want that would normally be darker on a feature. So the nose looks darker and you'd have shadows under the neck, so that's a bit darker. Shadow obviously around the mouth, so that would be a little bit darker. After that, I use a bit of paper towel just to wipe away some of the dark areas and just to create some highlight. Because if you look at something in life, it has highlights as well. So it's not everything is one flat color. So we're now moving on to some coloring of the bird itself. Now, you'll see later on that I do end up airbrushing this bird, but I just wanted to sort of share with you that you can actually, if you don't have an airbrush, you can actually brush the colour on with a paintbrush normally. And as you can see, I've just brushed all this on in yellow. The undertones of Fawkes is yellow, and then as you look at the bird, you'll see that it does have other colours. So the areas that are in shade are brown to black, whereas the areas that are highlighted are the yellow and the whites, but his main colour is red. So we start with the yellow, which is the lightest undertone, and then we'll continue to layer some colours over the top of that. And if you find you've got an area that's too dark, you can actually just simply wipe it off, or use a little bit of paper towel, and again that will give you a little bit of highlight. So as you can see here, I'm colouring over it first with a paintbrush. So if you're going to use a paintbrush, you're better with having a brush with that is wider and larger, not harsh. We want a reasonably soft brush because you don't want to ruin the modelling chocolate, remembering it never sets solid, so it's still easy to manipulate. So anyway, so I've painted the reds on to the colour that I like, and now what I'm doing with the airbrush, as I said, if you don't have an airbrush, you can paint this on if you want to do that, but I find it easier. So I'm airbrushing my undertones first, but just being really, really careful that the areas that I'm not going to be doing it too dark, because remember we want him to be a little bit redder than what he is here. And he's not all brown. So we're just doing it lightly and just highlighting the areas that you would normally see highlighted if you're going to look at something. So under the wings, where the wings join the body, where the head joins the neck, and so forth. So they're the areas that you would normally be highlighting. Just another tip, because he's quite a large bird, if you were going to be transporting him, what you could do is get one of those hollow tubes, put that into the top of the cake, fill that with dark or chocolate, any sort of chocolate, and insert the bird support or the bird into that and let it set. Now that will provide you more support for the actual figurine or any figurine itself and stop it moving. I haven't done that here, but if you're going to transport it any sort of long distance, that's probably the ideal scenario. So here we go. We're just continuing to highlight, and as you can see, I'm now moving on to highlighting the outer parts of the wings and the red. Now in a minute you'll see I do show you how I attach it to the cake, which actually was really tricky because it's such a big cake, and I actually had to stand on top of a stool to try and attach it, and then I was holding my camera with my other hand to try and film it to show you guys how I attach it. So it was somewhat awkward and my lighting wasn't that great, so we'll get to that in a minute, so I do apologize in advance, but I did do my best to show you how I did attach it. Okay, here we go. So this is my really bad lighting. As you can see, I'm just pushing the skewers into the cake. And as I said, it does set solid, but you don't want to put too much pressure on one spot of the bird, but you can colour over it slightly if you do ruin a bit when you're putting it in. I filled in the areas where you could see the skewers before, and as you can see, I've made some modelling chocolate pieces for the claws, and there is the finished bird. So thank you all for watching. I very much appreciate it.